Peasants, I am Louis Guidetti. Today we have an awesome video. We have two drawings that I'm going to be critiquing and redrawing. And I also have a new intro which is supposed to limit me so that I'm not too long in my intro, because apparently I do go too long, which reminds me, funny story. Rewind 8 years ago, Field of Strife, battle. Sounds of despair could be heard everywhere, surrounded by orcs, and for some reason I was not wearing any pants. So once again, we have another drawing from our good friend, Clara. And Clara has been on this program several times before, and I think she's really learned a lot. She's thanked me personally. I've changed her life with the critiques that I have given her. Now, in all honesty, her work is actually very good. It's improving quite a bit. And I've linked her Instagram down below in the description. But she has a very good mentality and she doesn't want to learn. She's doing all the right things to do that. So let's take a look and see what she has in store for you and me. All right, so I have made some changes, and let us see what glorious maneuvers I have pulled to bring this from the depths of despair to the highest heights of human and divine perfection. Boom! So as you can see, we have this area and this area, and they are not responding correctly. It needs to be kind of going up more like that. This shot is taken at an angle, so there's going to be some perspective warp, but still I just don't think that it's possible to rectify the proportions, even factoring in the perspective warp. This part is not corresponding with this part, so I need to bring it more straight up and down like that. This mouth right here is kind of going too far down that way, so I brought it back up some like that. The eyes need some work. Then we also have the nose right there. So we have the eyes, okay, and then we have the nose right there, all right? So, and this is very, very important, okay? When I fixed this area, you can't just fix this one line and bring it out that way without it affecting this. And the reason why this is going this way compared to this is because this whole area is going too far that way as well. So here is the correction that I made, and I essentially at the same time as I moved the mouth that way, I corrected the shapes. I also filled the chin in some because it was a little bit cut off, as you can see right there. It's a little bit small, it's tucked back some, so I gave it a little bit more flesh. All right, and I want to draw your attention up here to the cheekbone, which is protruding too far. That should not be happening because we have this area right here, and the width of which would be in a different position. It would be facing more away. So essentially this and this are in two different positions. I brought this area in that way, which fixes this and unifies this as one position in the face. I really didn't do that much with the eyebrows, as you can see. I did go through with a few expertly placed lines up in the forehead. As you can tell right here, we have a 1 line, a 2 line, and kind of a 3, and kind of a 4 going up like that. Like I've mentioned before, drawing with straight lines will force you to see angles, and when you draw with angles, you'll create points in which you can measure off of. A lot of people put these little marks right here, this little dark mark here, and then this shadow here. And there is a shadow, but normally it kind of comes down like this, and then it kind of forms around the nose. But it's darker here, and it's darker here, and it's lighter in this area. So as you can tell, I fixed that, and so there is this darker shadow up top. This shadow, which, you know, I might have made it a little bit lighter in there, but it still works because I did it. And then we have this little shadow going right down there, and it's kind of describing the side of the nostril. We can see this area right here. I brought that up just a little bit as I reshaped the nostril and brought the light into that area. I also brought down the drawing that you have up in here to make it a little bit smoother so it's not as bulbous, because if you look at what we have here, we have all these dark marks and these lines right here, and this essentially makes it look like there are wrinkles, and that's just, it doesn't work. The way you want to think about drawing is imagine an egg with light on it, and you want a unified flow of light. So what are the things that can be washed out? You want to imply form up in the eyelids, but you can do that through shadow. You don't need to do these strong lines cutting into it, because if you do that, like I said, it's going to look like a wrinkle or something, and that doesn't work with a woman who is of this age. Speaking of unifying light shapes and such, essentially I want y'all to pay attention to these transitions in here and just the general shapes of them. And this is what I did. So I essentially fixed some of the drawing, unified them a little bit more, fixed the drawing here, right? So it flows a little bit more with the forehead and the brow. And I also brought this area, obviously I brought that out, put this little value on it so that this turns. I mean, her head kind of does look like a peanut of sorts right here. And I think it has to do mainly with the forehead up at the top. I can't stop seeing a peanut or thinking about a stick of butter when I look at this drawing. However, I will give it to you, Clara, the creativity behind this is good. I do like the colors. I know that the colors are how you see things in reality. And it's not like that, but that's okay. I like the creativity, if you can call it that, behind it. All right, so you did a good job with that. All right, so next up we have a drawing from one of my good friends, Xerx. He is not artistic. I was expecting a stick figure of some sort, and I would obviously critique that, but he spent his time on a drawing that actually looks really good for his first drawing. This is Roadhog from Overwatch. That's what he chose to do, and it's a video game that Xerx enjoys playing. I obviously don't have time, being an upstanding member of society and just an extreme athlete. I simply do not have the time to play. I don't have the time to get better at Reinhardt. I don't have the time to heal on Mercy or Flex instead of doing DPS and healing. I don't have time to try to get better at using line of sight so that I maintain my line shield a little bit better for the teams that I can protect them. I simply don't have the time for this type of nonsense. But however, Xerx does. So let's go ahead and see what we can do to improve this drawing. Boom! All right, so this is what we have, and this is what it was before. He was actually, I found the image that he was using. It's a pixelated image, which is why you'll see areas like this, which I probably should have rounded, but I did not. I kind of kept them pixelated and rounded other areas. But nonetheless, this is what I have done. And let me again show you the difference. We have his right here, which is that I'm telling you, this is good for first starting. It really, really is. Why? Because he's kept the lines simple. They're light, they're easy to change. And so yes, there are proportional issues. Yes, there's technique problems, but it's stuff that you can work through. You can change the proportions, you can solidify your technique because it's able to be erased because you drew it lightly. That's a good thing. I brought him down this way, right? I brought him down that way, made him a little bit more thick. I used a hatching technique this time. I did not use a cross hatching technique. I did not put any curves on this to denote form. I did none of that because Xerx is just starting out. So I'm trying to give a critique that would be very beneficial for him. And I think that's something that he could work on, is just simply shading going crosswise like this, which is very hard to do if you're first starting. Look at his belly. it's kind of almost a circular shape because you're drawing the same size you think you see it. But if you really observe it, it's more elongated. And so that's what I have done. I have brought his belly out. Also, his head was a little bit high right there. As you can tell, it was going up a little bit too high compared to how wide it was. And so essentially when I'm drawing, and it doesn't matter if it's a figure, if it's a plant, if it's a freaking vase, it does not matter. I'm looking at the height and the width. The height and the width. Just look at the height and the width and compare the two. Don't look at all the detail. Don't look at none of that. Just look at the height and the width and try to compare them, relate them to other areas, and draw them with straight lines. That's all you have to do. And his head obviously is very square, as we can tell, so it's very easy to get those distances. And you can probably tell in the sped up process, I actually went through, I drew this area right here and I changed it because I did not get the major proportions right and I did not relate it to the rest of this drawing. So that's something very important that you have to look at when you are drawing. You want to be able to not only draw one area correct, you want it to relate to everything else. And to do that, you have to look at the entire freaking shape. Now, I want to draw your attention over here to the hook handle. Not that I would know this, that's what Roadhog uses to hook his enemies in, and you shoot something in the face with this magnificent gun right there. If we're looking at this, you might think, oh, it's a curve, right? Wrong. It's not a curve, because if you look, you can see these straight lines. Now, I might have transformed them into curves a little bit later on, and yes, you can go through and erase with an eraser these little points that we see here. I will zoom in further still. We have this line here, this line here. And I do like to sometimes leave these little crosses, as you can see. That's kind of crossing through, and that kind of accentuates the points. All right, so going back to the basics with this, if I was developing this, if I was drawing it from scratch, because I corrected it, I just shifted things with his, but if I was just going to go through and start from scratch, I would mark the bottom point, I would mark the top point, and in this case, it's a static image. I would mark this point here perhaps, and then this over here. So we got these points here, but I would definitely mark this. And then I would take some time. It's not enough just to mark it and say, okay, I marked it, then you moved on. You want to keep looking at there, keep judging it. For example, when I mark this and I mark that, I might move this out some, I might move it back some, maybe just a hair width. Make sure everything is correct. And in that way, you are training your mind, you're exercising your mind to see these distances, these widths, the height, all right? And if you can do that, if you do that repetitively, if you practice this stuff, you're gonna get good at seeing the widths, you're gonna get good at seeing the heights, and that is the idea behind it. And from there, you just break these shapes down, and I'll show you what I mean. We have these points here, and once you get good at that, then you can say, okay, well, where is his chest strap? It's right here, because I can see this distance, and this distance makes sense, right? You know, we have his belly right here. Where's his hand? His hand would be here because I can see this width, I can see this width, all right? And then from his hand to the angle to, say, this belly button point, if you wanted to do that, you can see that and you can see the width. We're exercising our mind to see points and to be able to break large points down into smaller points. That's drawing. And then, of course, using the straight line technique, which I adamantly and expertly recommend. Xerx, I have to hand it to you. This is, like I said, a very surprising drawing. I did not expect to see, well, I did expect to see a Roadhog, come to think of it. And I guess you could not really do a stick figure of Roadhog. I'm not sure how you would, but if anybody could figure out, I know you could. He's just so fat. But still, you did a really good job, and if you want to continue to draw, I would recommend it. I think this is very good. I'd be eager to see what else you could do. I'm impressed. I did not see that coming. Once again, I've delivered another power pack explosion of information to your face in the form of golden, roasted, and chunky sweet morsels of goodness. Use this information not to express yourself or because you enjoy art, no. Use it to belittle the peasants and keep them subdued. So until next time, I am Guidetti. Corporal Shift Elf Transformation, second form. Hehehe